The Leader of the Opposition, Anthony Albanese, has been patiently standing by in Canberra waiting to be interviewed. Alba, good morning to you. Anything you wanted to say to the Treasurer? I mean, you got absolutely everything you wanted.
There's a gap between what the Treasurer says and what the budget papers show. The Treasurer just spoke about wages. It shows that real wages will actually go down, having stalled for 8 long years of this government. He spoke about infrastructure investment. They say $10 billion of extra infrastructure investment. The budget papers show that there's a cut of $3.3 billion over the forward estimates over the next 4 years. The Treasurer spoke about a plan for jobs. This is a plan for Scott Morrison's job, no one else's. There's no long-term plan here. The Treasurer spoke about state governments potentially closing borders, and we know that they've opposed all that, but they're closing our border until mid-next year because they haven't got their act together on the 2 essential jobs they had this year to get right: the vaccination rollout and quarantine.
Albo, it does kind of jam you, though. It's out-labouring Labor budgets.
No, Carl, Labor budgets have plans to help people, to actually lift people up, to lift wages, to boost productivity. This isn't a reforming budget. This is identifying where they had problems that they themselves had created, with the aged care crisis, for example, with childcare affordability, putting some money at it, but not solving any of the fundamental issues there. Take childcare, their plan will help 1 in 4 of the people that we will help with our policy that we announced just last year. On aged care, there's still no guarantee at all that there'll be a nurse present in every aged care home at all times.
It was Whitlam-esque, though, you must admit.
Well, the Whitlam government, of course, would have put in place some bigger reforms, but they had some economic problems. What the Treasurer also didn't say when he spoke about debt and paying it back is that actually debt peaks in 2025 as a proportion of the economy at 41%. They inherited 15%. And they used to run around this building like chooks with their head chopped off, saying it was a disaster. Now it's going to be triple that, and it hasn't peaked yet. It doesn't peak until 2025.
All right.
So debt going up, wages going down.
Okay,
that's what's happening as a result of this budget.
So hypothetically, you become the next Prime Minister. When will you deliver the nation's first surplus in a while?
We'll wait and see in terms of their pots that they've put out as well, Carl. The other thing that they've done is that there's a whole lot of decisions taken but not announced. They're not going to tell you how they're going to spend your money. In one program alone, there's a line item that shows $3.8 billion next year. For what? Who knows? They won't tell us. Just slush funds using taxpayers' money, your viewers' money, for their own political purposes, rather than to actually build in structural reform that helps this and future generations, rather than a plan to lift wages, boost productivity, enter into the new industries that'll create future prosperity. This isn't about the country's future. It's about Scott Morrison's next 12 months.
OK, so you've run the budget down this morning. What precisely is Labor going to vote against, though?
Well, where's the legislation? We obviously won't block supply. The other mob did that in 1975. So we'll wait and see what is actually going to be legislated, Carl. And we'll wait and see what
that's a big donut. That's a big donut.
No, we'll wait and see what's actually delivered, Carl. The fact is that last year, the centrepiece of the budget last year, remember this, was the JobMaker program that they said would create 450,000 jobs. It created 1,000. 449,000 short. Missed by that much.
Here's the thing, though, Alba, normally after a budget, now the opposition will be screaming from the rafters, I'll be voting against something. But you can't even say what you'll vote against this time.
No, Carl, that's a nonsense question. You know better than that. We haven't seen the legislation.
Yeah, but you know what I mean.
Ask me a specific... No.
Is there anything specific in the budget that you fundamentally disagree with, and so much so when you see the legislation you'll vote against?
Look, there's a range of things, some of which need to be legislated, some of which don't, that we regard as being totally inadequate. Childcare is one that I've given you an example. Our plan will support 97% of families. Their plan, you'll need to have 2 children in care at the one time. Now, that represents 1 in 4 at most of Australian families. That's not childcare reform. It's not what the business community have called for. And the logic of it is that the Treasurer himself in his document says that the plan of $1.7 billion over 4 years will boost the economy by 1.5 each and every year. If that's the logic, if they've finally conceded that Labor was right last year with our childcare plan, they haven't actually had the ticker to adopt it properly. What they've done is they're too busy saving money for their pork barrelling exercises during an election campaign to worry about the quality of the investment that will actually produce that long-term reform. And do you think, Carl, for 1 second, do you think there would have been any mention of women's policy issues in this budget if it weren't for Brittany Higgins and the speech she gave right here outside Parliament House in the March for Justice?
I think there's a huge element of truth to that. A huge element of truth.
Last year they didn't even have a women's economic statement.
True. Just before we go, Albo, are you preparing for an election this year, or do you think it'll be early next year?
I'm ready, Carl. I'm ready. I'm ready whenever it's called. If they do call one, it's just because they can't sustain government into next year. We have 3-year terms. They're too short, in my view. We've tried a couple of times to make it 4 years. If they run to an early election, it's because things are going to get worse, not better. And certainly, if you look at these budget papers, things don't get better. There's no real plan rising from this budget for the nation's future, just a plan to spend and to deal with political issues in the short term.
Good to talk to you, Albo. Thanks for your time today. Appreciate it.
Good on you.
Well, just ahead, our live interview with the Prime Minister, the hidden cost of his multi-billion-dollar budget splurge.
Also ahead, today's special report on cholesterol / the risk of Australia's silent killer.